name's Claire. I'm one of the directors at Oxfordshire County Council. I am really, really pleased to be here today, and it's not because I'm a transport planner or head of transport strategy, and that's the challenge that I think you're going to have later on in your deliberations. My role at the County Council is in corporate services, so I look after libraries and customer services, but also I support the Cabinet and the Council in terms of public engagement, communications and consultation. So it's been a really long time since the County Council has been involved in a citizens' jury process. I'll share with you some other information later, but we have loads of consultation that we do. This is a really important opportunity for us. And our councillors and our cabinet are really committed to doing things differently around public consultation. So a couple of months ago, they launched a new consultation strategy, and I'm really pleased to be able to take this opportunity with colleagues from the university. So I'm going to talk at the end about how we're going to use this information, but I've also been asked to set a little bit of context about how a county council works. So, we have a two-tier political system which was organised in 1974. Some councils have moved on and one council does everything for an area. Oxfordshire is not like that. We have the two-tier system. Now, I'm sure many of you in the room know more about councils than I do, and some of you might not know anything, so excuse me if I cover something you already know. But I'm not going to do a test, but can you name your ward councillor? Can you name your county council divisional councillor? Do you know what their different roles are? And could you tell me who the lead cabinet members are for different themes within the county and the city? And I think one of the challenges that you'll face during this is, some of you will be able to answer that, but I think one of the challenges is it's a really complex area. So just to give you a sense of that, the County Council is responsible for highways and transport infrastructure, but not railways. And the City Council is responsible for housing. So clearly, transport infrastructure makes a great place to live, and the County Council and the City Council have got a duty to work together on that. But they're two different organisations with different budgets, different political members controlling those decisions. Quite a complex organisational environment, really. So the County Council has a commitment to be net zero by 2030. I was trying to work out how long that is. I think it was 84 months or something like that. It really is a really challenging and aspirational objective around net zero. And it has an innovation hub that it works on, particularly around transport and planning matters, to do quite a lot of experimentation and development in that area. So we do have some really high levels of interest in how to do things differently. We've got...
Can you just explain net zero?
Oh yes, so that means that, sorry, that's a good point, thank you. Net zero is essentially our carbon emissions add up to zero. So if we emit, we offset somewhere, is the long and the short of it. We have a consultation and engagement platform. If you... will signpost you to it, but you can see on that platform there's loads of consultations going on at the moment about footpaths, about highways, about LTNs, which are low traffic neighbourhoods, all sorts of things. So it's a really complicated environment for that. We also have a long-term transport and connectivity strategy, and that is an aspiration to have a net zero transport network by 2040. So again, you can see there's some really, really high aspirations around that. And if you think that transport travel is one of the key emitters of carbon, that you'll see how ambitious that is. But there are some other real challenges for Oxfordshire, and Oxford particularly. So across the county, those who are the luckiest, wealthiest, healthiest live 10 years longer on average than those who aren't. So health and well-being is a really important aspiration for our cabinet. Probably won't talk any more about some of those policies, but their ambition as a cabinet is healthier, fairer and greener. So bringing those three together is really important. So how does decision making work in the council? The council has 63 politically appointed elected members, and they come together, and the largest group forms a cabinet, just like Parliament. Oxfordshire doesn't have one single largest group, so we have a coalition of Liberal Democrat, Labour and Green. So they have to work together with their respective parties to make agreements. Now that is quite challenging in itself because they have slightly different policy objectives, different priorities within that. So we do have a cabinet system. So within that cabinet of 11 or so people, different members take responsibility, and we have 3 members that cover the areas of transport, highways and climate change. And that's a combination of Liberal Democrat members and Labour members. So within that council system, we have a constitution, and the council is responsible for setting a balanced budget every year. And then the constitution sets out what things are decided by the cabinet and what things are decided by the council, all 63 as a group. We have a legal responsibility to set a balanced budget. If we don't, and we don't get that right, the consequences are quite significant. So councils can go bankrupt. Is probably not the right word, but if you look to what happened in Northamptonshire, it's a really good example of when a council ran out of money. We have a general power as a county council to do anything that supports the well-being of residents. But that sounds really exciting. But we can't raise taxes outside of our rules, and the government sets how much money we can generate as part of that. We have to adhere to the Equalities Act, which is a piece of legislation around making sure that our services don't have negative impacts on different groups. If we get it wrong, if we get a decision wrong, take a decision outside of policy, we can be subject to judicial review, which basically means the courts can review our decisions around that. So, a little bit more about the budget, which I think is quite an interesting one, and I think this will pose you some real challenges, hopelessly overrun. We have about £1 billion that we spend over 10 years on capital projects, which is bridges, roads, schools, building stuff. And every year we have a revenue budget, the money that we spend on service delivery, of about 933 million. Schools, education, get a big slice of that automatically, and so that gets taken off our budget, and we're left with 734. 52% of that is spent in children's and adults. 8% of that is spent on highways and transport. 2% in libraries and culture. Gives you a sense about how priorities fall. 7% of our income is used for servicing the money we have to borrow for those big capital projects, new bridges, new schools, and then making sure we've got enough financial contingency in the event of a horrible incident like COVID coming up. So that's the sort of financial constraints that we operate in. And every cabinet, when they're newly elected, is really excited because of all the things they want to do, and then they realise all the legal requirements around Ofsted, around the inspection that's coming in for adult social care, around the fact that we have to support all different types of services. And really, it's not a question of what they can spend their money on, it's a question of how they deliver savings within that huge budget to be able to support their priorities. So just by way of summary, we've got a high-level strategy, the Local Transport and Connectivity Plan, which I think you've been sort of pointed to. That is due for adoption by Cabinet in June. It's a big long-term strategy, so that would be one of those decisions that has to go up to full council. So they'll be looking at that, I think, in July. But underneath that are the detailed schemes that happen in towns and the policies around things like buses or walking or active travel and all of those different things. And that's where I think the innovation and the interest happens. That strategy was launched for consultation last year in draft 2021 October, and it finished in March 22. So where your time frame is we've got those big visions around net transport network, which is net zero by 2040. and there's a hierarchy of different preferences around transportation, and the Cabinet quite innovative and ambitious for climate, but we're still doing the work on those strategies that sit underneath that, and that's where this falls into. Promise, this is the last thing I'll say, the Cabinet will get an update in July, which is their last meeting before the autumn. So they'll get an update from these sessions in July, and then I've been asked to organise a public meeting, which is, we have scrutiny committees, which will look at the detail of this when it's available. So there'll be scrutiny in public of the outcomes. And then, of course, we'll make sure, and we have to do this as part of the decision-making around strategy, we'll make sure that all of the consultation responses are clearly set out in our documentation around how we've responded to them. And that's a requirement, so we don't get into all of the trouble that I was talking about with things like judicial reviews. Last thing, the reason why members aren't involved in this, under the 2011 Localism Act, there's a really clear requirement for members to not predetermine decisions. So Cabinet members have been away from the setting of this because they're the decision makers on it. As an officer, my job is to advise on policy but not to decide on the policy. The Cabinet and the Council make those decisions, which is one of the reasons why we're getting technical input from, it'll be me and one of our transport plans later on, and members will then receive that report. So I'm going to be here in the break, so if anyone has got any queries on anything else, do grab me, because I do speak council jargon sometimes. Thank you.
Great, thank you.